I'm after you. They say you can never outrun the stink of Briadin port. Salt and rot, blood and piss. It's in the boards of the dockside brothels and the cracked teeth of every knife-smiling thug who ever sold their soul for half a silver. I was born there. Grew up pissing behind fish stalls and punching teeth out for copper bits. Never knew my mother. Died of plague, they said. My father. He gave me to the orphanage once I was old enough to break his jaw. Didn't cry about it. Didn't miss him. I learned early that weakness gets you eaten in Briadin. So I built myself up. Bone by bone. Scar by scar. Eventually, I joined the city guard. Thought maybe I'd turn the game on its head. Maybe I could swing a sword legally and get paid to break a few skulls. That lasted 3 years. Captain Galt kicked me out for being, his words, a cocky, insubordinate bastard with a death wish and no grasp of protocol. I took that as a compliment. Before the sun rose the next day, I was gone. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't leave a note. Briadin port can rot. My first taste of true freedom came in the town of Carvens Hollow, 2 weeks' ride north into Jyndari's dirt-licked interior. I had silver in my boot, a stolen sword across my back, and a thirst like a dying ox. Carvens Hollow had 1 inn, 1 blacksmith, and more chickens than teeth. I walked into the Hung Horse Tavern like I owned the place. Doors swung, conversations died. I liked that. Drank their ale, barked at the barkeep, flirted with a widow whose husband had probably died choking on his own misery. That night I ended up in a fight. 2 local boys, farmhands with arms like barrels and brains like fermented cabbage, didn't appreciate me bedding their sister, Lystra. They came in swinging pitchforks. I broke the first one's jaw with a bar stool and slammed the second through a table. Lystra just laughed and poured me another drink. Later, in the half-dark of her straw-stuffed bed, she traced the scar across my ribs with a calloused finger.
That from a sword?
A shovel. Some cunt tried to bury me in his turnip patch after he found me stone-drunk with his wife. She laughed. A deep, throaty chuckle. The next morning, I left a silver on her pillow and stole a kiss while she slept. I don't believe in love, but I respect good company. And she had fine taste in knives. 3 days later, I took a job guarding a merchant wagon headed west to Den Haven. Gold up front, danger guaranteed. My kind of work. The merchant, a soft-handed weasel named William Tannon, smelled of rose oil and dressed like he thought the gods were watching. He said he dealt in fine fabrics and exotic spices. I figured he was lying. Didn't care. As long as the coin didn't bend after biting it. 2 days into the trip, I woke up to find the wagon gone and my boots missing. Tannon had vanished in the night, and the 2 other hired guards, a lanky axe-wielder named Melrick and a bored crossbowman named Noel, were nowhere to be seen. I spat dirt from my mouth and followed wagon tracks into a gorge. Found the cart 2 miles down, wheels shattered, crates broken open. Spice? No. Only weapons. Blades. Axes. Even a few crates of black iron shackles. Slaver stock. That's when I heard the whisper.
Told you he'd come looking.
It was Melrick. He stepped from behind a boulder, smirking. Noel followed, crossbow in hand, already cocked. "You 2 planning to sell me along with the rest of the gear?" I asked, cracking my knuckles.
"No, we already did,"
said Noel. Then the lights went dark. I don't remember the blow that dropped me, just the sting of betrayal. When I woke, my head throbbed and my wrists were shackled. I was in a caged cart, surrounded by desperate men and women, slaves in all but name. A slaver caravan, run by House Thornton. Nobles hiding behind legitimacy and trade permits. They operated out of southern Jyndari, near the forest border, sold flesh to the mines and garrisons that needed warm bodies and cold loyalty. 2 days in the cage. Not one word. Not 1 ounce of regret. On the 3rd night, we stopped at a creek. That's when I met Gris. He was a big bastard. Former pit fighter, they said. Quiet. Watched everything. When a guard struck a young man across the mouth, Gris growled low. Didn't move. Just growled. "You planning something?" I asked him in the dead of night. He looked at me with placid eyes.
"You the one who brought the axe boys?"
Got double-crossed. He leaned close.
"You got a plan?"
"I don't make plans. I take chances." He smiled for the first time.
"Good, you'll like mine."
The next day, during a piss break, Gris faked a seizure. Dropped like a sack of bricks. When the guards rushed over, I sprang the lock I'd been picking with a sliver of bone I'd hidden under my leather belt. Leapt from the cart, snapped a guard's neck before he could shout. Gris rose, lifted a stone the size of a watermelon, and caved in the head of another. Chaos erupted. Screams. Steel. Blood. I found my sword and pair of boots on one of the supply carts. Took it back like an old lover. By the time the sun rose, 7 guards were dead. Gris was wounded, but alive. The rest of the prisoners scattered into the woods. Me? I looted the corpses. Found the merchant Tannon's signet ring on one of the slavers' necks. That bastard had sold me twice. Gris sat by the fire that afternoon, nursing a shoulder wound.
"You going after the merchant?"
He asked. I tossed a pouch of silver onto the ground. "First, I'm going to find a drink."
"And then?"
I stood, shouldering my blade. "And then, I'm going to slit William Tannon's throat and take every coin he's ever touched." Gris nodded.
"If you ever need a fist, find me in Samaris."
I didn't look back. I rode west, heart cold and greedy. I'd been conned, caged, nearly sold. But I was alive and angry, and I had names to carve into stone. William Tannon would be the first, but not the last. They say the city of Arlenvale was built on bones, old ruins buried beneath stonework, where gutters run red during rain, and secrets get stuck in your boots like shit on a stable boy's heel. It suited me fine. I arrived a few days after the slave cart escape, saddle sore, and riding a stolen mare I named Spite. The name fit. She kicked like a devil and hated everyone but me. Smart girl. The gates of Arlenvale were tall, ironclad, and manned by guards too bored to care. They barely looked at my forged papers. Good. Less questions, less reasons for me to start cracking skulls. I needed 2 things. Coin and a lead on William Tannon. The coin came first. I beat a drunk noble's bodyguard in a bare-knuckle brawl behind a gambling den, walked away with 60 silver and a broken thumb. Not mine. His. Then I took work breaking up a local gang, shaking down vendors in the fish market. 3 dead thugs later. The fishmongers gave me smoked cod and a whisper.
"Tannon was here, a few days ago, asking questions about trade routes into the Vexlo Marsh."
I almost laughed. Tannon. Prim. Perfumed. Cowardly Tannon. Heading toward a swamp filled with biting insects and piss-colored mist. Either he was desperate, or he thought he could vanish there. Either way, he'd made a mistake. I spent the next night in a backroom tavern called the Gutter Queen. A place where the drinks taste like regret and the floorboards remember every murder. I played cards with a toothless fence who confirmed the rumor.
"Tannon's headed east. He bought maps, paid in House Thornton minted gold. No one's seen him since."
Thornton. That southern noble house with their fake smiles and slaver chains. The same bastards who'd caged me. I downed my drink and stared into the fire. Tannon wasn't just running. He was covering tracks. Likely had another caravan. Maybe even another shipment of misery hidden under a false bottom of silks and spices. He was close. Closer than I realized. Before I left, I carved a message into the tavern's wall with the point of my knife. Tannon bleeds next. Someone would see it. Maybe word would spread. Maybe it'd reach his ears. Let him sweat. The next morning, I rode out with a rum-filled waterskin, a sack of dried meat, and a hunger in my gut that had nothing to do with food. The marshlands were 3 days east, ugly country filled with worse things than mosquitoes. But I'd walk through fire if it meant wrapping my hands around William Tannon's neck. He sold me out once. Thought he could vanish into the world and hide behind gold and titles. He was wrong. Now he's got a reckoning coming, with my name carved across it like a curse. And God's help anyone who stands in the way. The road east from Arlenvale wasn't much of a road at all, more a suggestion. Muddy ruts, overgrown roots, and the constant drone of insects big enough to chew through leather. Spite hated every step. I didn't blame her. By the second night, I made camp on a hill overlooking the Vexlo Marsh. Mist clung to the wetlands like a drunk to his last coin. The air smelled of rot and secrets. Somewhere out there, William Tannon was hiding. Or worse, doing business. I wasn't the only predator in these parts. That night, while I sharpened my blade, a noise stirred the trees. Not the wind, not some dumb animal, something deliberate. I froze, hand on hilt, ears straining. Footsteps, soft, but not careful enough. "You've got one chance," I said into the dark. "Step out and keep your hands where I can see them." A figure emerged from the mist. A young man in patched leather, eyes darting, hands trembling.
Easy now. Name's Rel, just a courier.
"Then what in the 9 hells are you doing creeping around my fire?"
I've got a message, one that's paid for discretion.
I gestured with my blade. "Speak. Fast." He fished a parchment from his satchel and tossed it toward the firelight. I caught it without looking away from him. The seal was broken. Thornton crest. Bold of them to try anything subtle. I read it quickly. "Kalron, if you're reading this, then you've already found the trail. You always were good at sniffing out blood. Know this. Tannon isn't who you think he is anymore. He's under House Thornton's protection. Fully vested. Touch him, and you'll start a war you can't win. Walk away. That's your only mercy." I stared at the letter, then at Rel. "Did you read this?" He nodded. "Pity." Before he could run, I stepped in and cracked him across the temple with the flat of my blade. He crumpled like a cheap tent. I wasn't about to kill a courier. Not unless I had to. But a message like that? It only made my blood hotter. Tannon wasn't hiding. He was nesting. Surrounded by guards, privilege, and House Thornton's dirty silver. He thought a noble seal could shield him from the storm coming. I buried the letter in the fire and watched the wax and ink curl like skin under a brand. He thought wrong. By dawn, I was in the marsh. The Vexlo March swallowed the sun in thick fog and moss-draped trees. Every step squelched, every shadow whispered. But I moved forward, blade ready, eyes sharp. I followed broken branches, crushed reeds, whispers from half-mad trappers. Late that day, I found it, wagon ruts, old but clear, and beside them a sigil burned into a tree. Thornton's mark, closer. I took a breath, slow and steady. My pulse beat like war drums in my chest. William Tannon was near, and I wasn't stopping until I could watch the light leave his eyes. The deeper I went into Vexlo's marsh, the less it felt like a marsh, and more like a graveyard that forgot to finish the job. Trees leaned like dying men. The ground sucked at my boots, eager to pull me under. Spite refused to go farther. Smart girl. So I tied her to a gnarled cypress and went in on foot. Hours passed. No birds, no bugs. Just fog and silence. Then I found the camp. It sat on a rise above the mire. 3 wagons, 2 tents, and a small fire that someone hadn't bothered to hide. Arrogance or confidence. Either way, I planned to punish it. I crouched behind a moss-choked boulder and watched. 2 guards. Mail shirts, clean blades, mercs. Real ones, not farmhands in armor. Thornton coin bought quality. I circled wide, staying low. Found the back of the camp, near the supply wagon. Slipped between canvas shadows and crates reeking of spice and something sour. That's when I heard it. His voice. Tannon. He was speaking to someone in one of the tents. His words were soft, clipped, full of that smug composure I remembered from the road.
I don't care what the locals think. We're not leaving until the shipment is secure.
Shipment. There it was. He hadn't changed a bit. I waited for the guards to circle away, then slid into the tent next to his. A second shadow moved inside his, pacing. Another man. Possibly his new handler, or Thornton's leash holder. I drew my dagger, small, silent, perfect for quiet work, and cut through the tent wall with steady pressure. Just enough to see through. Tannon stood by a table, poring over a map. He still wore those ridiculous velvet coats, though this one was mottled with marsh stains. His hair was tied back. He looked thinner, tired, good. Fear wears on a man. The other figure stepped into view, tall, female, armor black as pitch, bearing Thornton's sigil across her shoulder plate. A knight, one of their enforcers, that complicated things. Tannon muttered,
If Kalron finds me...
He won't, and if he does, he dies.
No way, I thought, smirking. If I do, you die, bitch. I backed away, slow and silent. I could have struck right then, killed Tannon, maybe even the knight if luck favored me. But that would be a skirmish, not justice. No, I needed more. I needed to tear down his walls before I slit his throat. I needed to send a message. That night, as the camp slept, I left a gift. One of their mercs went for a piss behind a tree. He didn't come back. When they found him in the morning, his throat was opened wide, eyes frozen in terror. Carved into his chest, with the tip of my dagger, were 2 words. I remember. Tannon screamed when he saw it. I heard him from the trees. The knight barked orders. The camp stirred like a kicked anthill. Good. Let him feel hunted. Let him know I was close, because I was done being a ghost. The next time I stepped into that camp, it'd be with blood on my boots and vengeance in my teeth. And William Tannon, he'd finally learn what it costs to sell a man like me. They doubled their patrols after the kill, posted guards in shifts, lit more torches, walked tighter circles. Didn't matter. Fear makes men sloppy. On the second night, I watched the night train 2 of the sellswords. Parries, counters, quick kills. She was good, disciplined, professional. But she wasn't hunting me. I moved with the dark, one shadow among many. Poisoned the stew pot with blackroot from the marsh. Not enough to kill, just enough to twist guts and break spirits. They blamed bad meat. Then they blamed each other. Tensions snapped like bowstrings. I let them unravel. Tannon stayed in his tent, trembling like a leaf in a storm. I knew the look. I'd seen it on men before they begged. That third night, I struck. Slipped in under the rain's cover, quiet as old sin. The night was first. She stood outside his tent, arms crossed, eyes scanning. Focused, alert, ready for everything. Except me. I crawled up like vengeance itself. I was behind her before she knew to scream. The blade slid through the gap between her gorget and pauldron. Clean. Efficient. She collapsed with a grunt, surprise still frozen on her face. One down. I didn't wait. Slashed the tent open and stormed in. Tannon was already backing up, wine cup spilling down his coat. He fell over his chair, shrieking like a cornered rat.
Kalron, wait!
I didn't. I kicked him onto his back and pressed my knee to his chest. My dagger found his throat. I gave you my trust, I said, voice cold. I guarded your wagon, slept beside your fire. Then you sold me, like cattle.
It wasn't personal. They paid well. I didn't know they'd...
Didn't know what? I snarled. That they'd throw me in chains? That I'd rot with the others while you walked free, counting coins soaked in blood? He tried to reach into his coat. Maybe for a weapon. Maybe a bribe. I didn't care. I broke his arm at the elbow. The sound it made was satisfying. He screamed. I leaned close. You sold me once, Tannon. This is what I sell you. And then I cut. Not quick. The blade went in under the jaw and out through the back of his throat. No time for last words. Just choking and blood. I left his body on his precious map table, bleeding across trade routes and territorial lines. A red smear on the plans of men who thought coin could buy safety. Outside, the mercs were still sick, still dazed. One saw me walk into the mist, sword dragging on the ground. He didn't follow. Smart. By dawn, I was riding west. Spite welcomed me back with a snort and a stomp. She must have smelled the blood. Maybe even liked it. I didn't look back. I never do. Tannon was dead. House Thornton would hear about it. And maybe they'd send someone. Maybe they'd want revenge. Fine. Let them come. I've got steel in my hands, scars on my skin, and a name that carries weight like a head in a sack. My name is Kalron, and I don't forgive. I bury